I'm a social anxiety sufferer, but my identical twin sister is a scheming green tea. Before entering the palace to become a concubine, she fretted over my marriage, so she put on that face identical to mine and flirted with every eligible young man in the capital. The next day, I stared blankly at the 7 young lords blocking my gate to propose marriage, and opened the silk pouch my elder sister left behind. Look, this is the kingdom I've conquered for you. My name is Xianxia, the legitimate second daughter of the Duke Protector's mansion. Don't get me wrong, the Duke Protector, who's famous throughout Shengjing for his white steed and silver saddle since his youth, isn't my father, but my mother. Shortly after I was born, a renowned monk read my fortune: shall not gain the one loved, shall not see completeness. Mother has never believed in gods and Buddhas, but when it comes to me, she's grown a little more cautious. She named me Xianxia, meaning beloved by all, in the hope that everyone would take a fancy to me, and what's more, she raised a whole nest of child fiancés for me on Kunwu Mountain. Yes, a whole nest. When I was 10, Mother took me to Kunwu Academy for the first time. There were about 100 young boys around my age, all wearing the same white cloth gowns, some poring over poetry and books, some practicing riding and archery hard. Mother raised her eyebrows, waved at me with a smile, and said, "Xianxia, anyone you like." Yet I still became an old maid no one in Shengjing dared to marry. Not a single one of those 100 fiancé candidates took a fancy to me. When I was 16, matchmakers thronged our gate all for Wan Yingying. Wan Yingying is my identical twin sister, but aside from our identical faces, we are not the least bit alike. Unlike me, who's even disliked by dogs, Wan Yingying is extremely popular, from elders in their 40s and 50s to children as young as 2 or 3. She can win anyone over in less than 5 minutes of conversation, but only I know Wan Yingying is a scheming green tea. No one knows how many malicious thoughts are hidden behind her slightly upturned lips. Yet Wan Yingying never targets me with her scheming. She likes to target our father. In her words, "It's far too unchallenging to plot against a straight shooter like me." Every time she sees father, her eyes light up. I know that's the joy of meeting an equal opponent. If father coughs dryly, Wan Yingying will have a headache the next second. If father sprains his ankle, Wan Yingying will accidentally fall off a horse within half a day. After mother's care was diverted several times in a row, father lost his temper. "What on earth are you doing?" Wan Yingying shrank behind mother in fright, spoke with tears in her eyes. "Father, I don't mean to, it's just that I've always been weak. If you're worried I'll pass my illness to you. Then throw me to the countryside manor to fend for myself." Father was furious, flicked his sleeves, and left to play chess with the retired emperor. They say the older ginger is, the spicier it is. Father didn't come back empty-handed. He also brought the imperial edict conferring Wan Yingying as a concubine. Seeing this, mother frowned so hard that a strand of her hair turned white, sighed at Wan Yingying. "I've heard the current emperor has 72 concubines in his harem. The harem is a place of endless strife and intrigue. You've been sensible since childhood. Have you ever seen such human malice?" I rested my chin in my hand and sat aside, thinking, oh my mother, those words are really reckless. Wan Yingying must be over the moon at such a good opportunity. But she's a master of acting. That night, she clung to mother and poured out her parting sorrows until the rooster crowed. When she spoke of the touching parts, mother even put on her silver armor and was about to storm into the palace. "Don't be afraid, even if I risk all my military merits, I'll have the emperor's edict conferring you as a concubine revoked." Wan Yingying's pupils constricted. She knew she'd gone too far. I pressed my lips to hide a smile. "Your comeuppance has finally arrived. For a battle-hardened green tea like her, this was just a minor scene." Wan Yingying quickly hugged mother from behind, shouted at the top of her lungs, "Mother, don't be impulsive, I'm fine." But Xianxian's marriage is still unsettled. I hadn't had enough of the show, yet the trouble was suddenly directed at me. Sure enough, mother stopped in her tracks, turned around and gave me a disgusted look, then let out a long sigh. I almost forgot this troublemaker. Wan Yingying smiled, patted her chest and promised, "Mother, don't worry, I'll take care of Xianxian's marriage." Though she said that, Wan Yingying did nothing about it. Until the day before she entered the palace, She sneaked out for a trip. She wore a light cyan robe and forbade the maids and servants from following her. She left before dawn and didn't come back until the stars rose. That night, a violent storm raged. Like when we were children, Wan Ying slipped into my bed. She stuffed a bright blue silk pouch into my hand and instructed, "Open it when you don't know what to choose." Early the next morning, before the Chen hour, Old Steward panted heavily and ran to the main hall, stumbling over his words and nearly tripping over the threshold. Father had just finished his porridge, frowned and asked, "What's the hurry?" Old Steward's chest heaved violently. He gasped for air and spoke clearly. "Hurry, someone has come to propose to the second young lady. Tell him our eldest daughter has already entered the palace." Halfway through his words, Father suddenly paused, then asked again, "Who did you say the proposal is for?" "The second young lady, sir," Old Steward repeated. Father stood up at once, casting aside his literati demeanor, and hurried out, even losing one shoe on the way. He shouted as he ran, "Have you invited him in? Have you prepared tea and pastries? Is he handsome? Forget it. I'll take him even if he's ugly. Hurry, close the main gate. What if he regrets it and runs away later?" At this critical moment, Mother was surprisingly sensible. She tugged Father's sleeve and whispered, "Don't be too happy just yet. There's something off about this man. We've been back in the capital for days. Have you seen any decent person come to propose to her?" Her voice died away the moment she saw the visitor. In the main hall, a young man stood upright. He wore a treasure blue robe, an inexplicable cold aura emanating from him. He bowed respectfully, yet without a hint of flattery. "Yi Huayan, the third-place scholar of this imperial examination, greets the Duke Protector and Minister Wan." Mother nudged Father's elbow with hers. This was the third-place scholar who'd refused the princess's marriage proposal at the palace banquet last night. A faint smile tugged at Yi Huayan's lips. "Like flowers blooming in spring, at the Chonglin banquet yesterday. I was fortunate enough to catch a glimpse of Miss Wan's grace, and my heart was instantly moved. I thought of you half the night and couldn't fall asleep, so I came at dawn. If I have failed in etiquette, I beg the Duke Protector's forgiveness." A hot potato was about to be thrown at us. Mother's excitement was uncontainable. She blurted out, "When will the matchmaker come? When will the 3 betrothal letters and 6 wedding rituals be held? What's the wedding date? Are your parents in the capital now? Where will you live after marriage?" She was on the verge of asking, "How many children will you have after marriage?" Father coughed dryly and turned his face away awkwardly. Just then, the gate boy ran in a fluster. "Master, young Master Pei is also here to propose to the second young lady." Father and Mother exchanged a look, both filled with disbelief. The only one worthy of being called young Master Pei in the capital was him, Pei Ji, the current head of the Hadong Pei clan. It was said that Pei Ji was cold and arrogant, and even looked down on the imperial family. Would such a man be willing to marry the notorious me? Stunned as if hit by a pie falling from the sky, it took my parents a long time to recover. They forced a smile at Yi Huayan. "Young Master Yi, let's discuss your marriage with my daughter later." Later, according to Pei Ji, he'd seen me praying for my parents at the Daxiangguo temple yesterday and was touched by my filial piety. I hid behind the screen and silently gave Wan Ying a thumbs up. After all, the Chonglin banquet was in the west of the city, and the Daxiangguo temple in the east. To marry me off. She really ran back and forth from east to west. Before Pei Ji could say his second word, another gate boy ran in. "Master, General Nai Jun, the commander of the Imperial Guards, is at the gate. He says he's here to propose to the second young lady." Father held his forehead. It was complete chaos, one after another, all choosing today of all days. Beside me, Yi Huayan smiled with soft eyes, while Pei Ji exuded an intimidating aura even without anger. Things were starting to spiral out of control. Father had a headache and flatly refused. "Tell General Nai that the mansion has important matters to attend to, so we won't invite him in. I'll personally visit him to apologize another day." The messenger boy ran back quickly and recounted vividly. General Nai said, "Why can everyone else come in except me? Does Minister Wan look down on a rough man like me? If that's the case, I might as well bang my head to death on this stone lion." Minister Wan, who was praised by everyone for his good manners, pulled a long face for the first time. "What are you standing there for? Hurry and invite him in." This concession led to 5 more suitors crowding into the main hall. Father frowned and counted them over and over again, finally fixing his gaze on the last one, Jiyu Zhao, the man I'd secretly loved for 5 years. I first met Jiyu Zhao at Kunwu Academy when I was 10. He sat by the window, a scroll in his hand. The interplay of light and shadow lent him a gentle air. Young as I was then, I couldn't move my feet. I stared at him blankly, tugged Mother's sleeve and said, "I want this one, just like that." Jiyu Zhao left Kunwu Academy and followed Mother and me to Jiangju. Jiangju was a border town with simple and open folk customs. Mother was always away fighting wars and had little time for me, so I ran wild like a mud monkey, rolling around in the military camp all day. Every night when the sky was dotted with stars was my happiest moment. That was when Jiyu Zhao just finished his evening lessons, and I could sneak to find him, show him the novelties I'd found these days, and tell him about the spear skills I'd just learned from my master. He was a quiet man, not fond of laughing, but he would patiently listen to me ramble about those trivial and boring daily things, and when the wind picked up at night, he would silently drape a large cloak over my shoulders from behind. Surely such a Jiyu Zhao liked me a little, I thought. When I was 13, Jiyu Zhao left for Shengjing to take the imperial examination. Before he left, he cut off a lock of his hair and swore an oath whether he succeeded or not. The day he returned would be the day we married. I waited and waited. The flowers in Jiangju bloomed twice before a letter of annulment arrived from Jiyu Zhao. In it, he said he had passed the imperial examination to become a Jinsha, taken Master Jiyu Heng as his teacher, and now studied in the Hanlin Academy. He would never forget the kindness of the general's mansion in raising him, and would repay it with his life if needed, but he no longer wished to marry me. To him, our bond was merely that of brother and sister, with no love between us. If I married someone else in the future, he would stand by my side as an elder brother and protect me. I refused to believe it. So I took the finest horse in the stables and rode non-stop for more than a dozen days and nights, from Jiangju all the way to Shengjing. When Wan Yingying saw me, she sighed in exasperation. Disappointed that I had failed to live up to her expectations, she led me to the moat. It was the Qixi festival that day. Through the sea of lanterns floating in the sky and on the water, I finally saw Jiyu Zhao. A young lady stood by his side. Wan Yingying said she was Master Jiyu Heng's eldest daughter. Miss Jiyu wore the most fashionable fabric in Shengjing, a spotless moon-white brocade shimmering with light, her every gesture exuding elegance and good breeding. She and Jiyu Zhao looked so perfect together. I stared down at myself, dusty and disheveled from the long journey. That day, I learned that Jiyu Zhao could smile after all. When he smiled, his eyes sparkled like stars, bright and clear. When he stood beside Miss Jiyu, he was so gentle, a gentleness he had never once shown me. It was true, then, the words in his letter were real. He did not love me. When I returned home, I fell gravely ill. Mother flew into a rage when she found out, and immediately ordered Jiyu Zhao to be captured and ground to dust. But I knew she was only saying that. She could never bring herself to hurt him. Most of the boys at Kunwu Academy were orphans, posthumous sons of Mother's soldiers who had died in battle. Jiyu Zhao's father had once been Mother's personal bodyguard, and had died shielding her from a rain of arrows in a great war. Father, by contrast, was much milder. He told the servants to paste a note on the gate of the general's mansion. Jiyu Zhao and dogs are not allowed entry. And now, Father frowned at Jiyu Zhao standing in the hall, barely able to contain his anger. The general's mansion is too small a temple to house a great Buddha like Lord Jiyu. His meaning was clear: get out. Jiyu Zhao acted as if he did not understand. His face calm and unruffled, he clasped his fists and spoke. I have come today to propose marriage to the second young lady of this mansion. A young servant stepped forward at that moment and whispered in Father's ear. Lord Jiyu brought betrothal gifts, 11 full carrying poles, blocking the entire alley mouth. The Dali temple was a poor yamen, with no opportunities for graft or gain. Jiyu Zhao must have spent his entire fortune on this. Father snorted coldly. So what? A man like him is not even worthy to polish my Xianxian's boots. Even humiliated like this, Jiyu Zhao did not anger. He adopted a look of utter indifference, and spoke calmly, naturally. I am not worthy of the prestige of the Duke Protector's mansion. I would even be willing to become a live-in son-in-law, with no regrets. Gasps of shock echoed through the hall. The other 6 young men standing below stared at each other in disbelief, never imagining that the esteemed vice minister of the Dali Temple would humble himself to such an extent, for an official. Becoming a live-in son-in-law was equivalent to casting aside all dignity. It was handing a blade to the censors of the censorate with one's own hands, a lifelong stigma, nailed to the pillar of shame forever. I did not understand what had come over Jiyu Zhao. He had been the one to annul our engagement once before, and now he was the one throwing everything away to regret it. But I had no desire to play this game with him any longer. I was lost in thought when a clear, youthful voice pulled me back to reality. Minister Wan, don't just look at him, look at me too. His voice held a hint of shyness by the end. If it really has to be, I am even willing to be her concubine. I hid behind the screen and looked over at the speaker. It was the young master of the Duke of Shun's mansion, Shun Yu, and beside him, the heir of the Marquis of Ningyuan, Pang Yuan, spoke up, unwilling to be outdone. Me too. My admiration for Wan Yingying grew another layer. To make people willing to go to such lengths, she was truly unparalleled. Father's brows furrowed even tighter, and he finally asked the question I had been curious about for a long time. May I ask how old you 2 young masters are? You have acted so rashly today. Do the Duke of Shun and the Marquis of Ningyuan know of this? For there was no other reason. These 2 young masters looked far too young. Shun Yu spoke forthrightly. I will be 15 in 2 years. Pang Yuan is 1 year younger than me. I covered my mouth to stifle a laugh. Mother, however, turned cold at once. She called for her personal guards and ordered them to send the 2 young masters home, and to explain what had happened to the Duke of Shun and the Marquis of Ningyuan. As they were dragged out of the hall, Shun Yu's tearful voice rang out repeatedly. I'll even be her slave or maid if I have to. Don't be so cruel, Sister Wan. I'll do anything if you'll teach me the wild goose feather spear technique. I did not know whether to laugh or cry. At the very least, 2 of them had not come for Wan Yingying. They had fallen for my spear skills instead. This concerned my lifelong happiness. So father and mother did not dare to make a hasty decision. They only said they needed more time to think. Unlike the others, however, Jiyu Zhao was thrown out of the general's mansion, along with his 11 carrying poles of betrothal gifts. Before Yi Huayan left, he asked to see me. I agreed, unexpectedly. Nai Jun was also unwilling to be outdone, and insisted on seeing me before he would leave. The 8-foot-tall, burly man paced anxiously in the main hall of my home. You'll see him but not me. Could it be that Miss Wan dislikes my appearance? If that's the case, afraid he would once again say something about banging his head to death, I hurried to say, I'll see you, I'll see you. Mother was terrified I would scare him off with my blunt words, and specially instructed me. If you don't know what to say, don't say anything at all. Play dumb, understand? The kind that can't speak. She was right. I was a social anxiety sufferer, a social terrorist. Few people could hold a conversation with me for more than 3 sentences. Wan Yingying was the only exception. I nodded in agreement. The result was that Nai Jun and I sat in the garden in silence, staring at each other. After a long while, Nai Jun finally stammered and asked me, Miss Wan, what do you think of me as a person? I thought of his grand feats of threatening to bang his head to death at every turn, pondered deeply, and then spoke solemnly. General Nai is a woman of unyielding chastity. Nai Jun did not hear clearly. What? I summoned all my knowledge to explain to him. When the late emperor was on the throne, there was a Mrs. Wang in Jinan. After her husband died, her in-laws forced her to remarry, but she refused and banged her head against a pillar to her death. I think General Nai, like Mrs. Wang, is a person of unyielding chastity, with a bearing unmatched by ordinary people. I swear, I was already picking the nicest words to say, but Nai Jun cried. He ran out of the general's mansion garden in tears, snot and saliva streaming down his face. As Nai Jun ran, his burly body wobbled back and forth. He rounded a path and crashed into someone. His strength was so great that he sent the person flying half a meter away. I strode forward to help the fallen person up, and only then realized it was Yi Huayan. His treasure blue robe had somehow been replaced with a snow-white one. His hair crown had been jostled askew in the collision, a few locks falling onto his forehead, lending him an unexpected air of helplessness. Yi Huayan's fingers were long and fair, and he gently tugged at the corner of my clothes. The third-place scholar who had inscribed his name on the wild goose pagoda and paraded through the streets on a steed only yesterday now hung his head, his eyes dim and downcast. His voice was very soft, as if afraid of disturbing me. Does the second young lady prefer Lord Pei or General Nai? In terms of power and status, I cannot compare to Lord Pei. In martial arts alone, I am no match for General Nai, and when it comes to affection, I may not even compare to Jiyu Zhao. So the second young lady could never consider me, could you? Yi Huayan let out a long sigh and continued speaking to himself. Even so, I am willing to stand guard by the second young lady's side forever. I felt a headache coming on. The news that the emperor had bestowed a marriage on the new third-place scholar and been refused had spread throughout Shengjing before dawn. It was said the emperor was furious, and had given him 3 months to marry, otherwise he would be charged with deceiving the emperor. After all, an excuse like "I already have someone I love" was far from convincing. The emperor was more willing to believe it was his youthful arrogance and contempt for the royal family. I stared at him in disbelief. Why go to such lengths? Yi Huayan must have seen my resistance to this marriage, and spoke to comfort me. Do not trouble yourself, second young lady. You need not ruin your life out of pity for me. I have always been alone in this world, even the punishment of executing 9 generations of my family. I do not fear. As long as the second young lady can live a happy life, I will have no regrets in this life. A vein throbbed on my forehead, and I finally could not hold back my anger and cursed. Fool, you were born into a poor family. Marrying the emperor's own sister would have let you climb into the royal family, rising through the ranks unimpeded. What on earth are you trying to do now? You studied hard for 18 years, and only just earned your official title. And now you're willing to throw it all away for a woman. If your parents were watching from heaven, they would crack open your skull to see just how much water has gotten inside it. Yi Huayan, who do you think you're worthy of? Damn it, I hate love-struck fools the most. After calming down, I could not help but feel curious. What on earth had Ruan Yingying done yesterday? Could she really use some kind of sorcery to bewitch people? Why was it that after meeting her just once, every single one of them had been struck with such mind-numbing stupidity? Lost in these thoughts, I opened the silk pouch Ruan Yingying had given me. A line of delicate small regular script was written inside. Look, this is the kingdom I've conquered for you. Get lost. The day Ruan Yingying returned to her maiden home, the emperor came with her. The young emperor, rumored to be cruel and violent, even propped his elbow up for Ruan Yingying when she sat down. Afraid she would bump into something and hurt herself. It was absurd. She had only been in the palace for less than 3 days. During the feast, someone somehow brought up my matter. Ruan Yingying rested her chin in her hand and smiled. I just wonder which of the 7 our Xianxia likes the most. I was sitting close by. Naturally, I saw the emperor wrap his arm around Ruan Yingying in fear, whispering in her ear, "Thank goodness it was you who entered the palace that day, otherwise the crown on my head would surely have turned green." I choked suddenly. The tea I had just swallowed nearly spurted out of my mouth. I even looked at the emperor with a hint of pity. Your crown was never even yellow to begin with. Okay. After 3 rounds of drinking, the emperor left the banquet early to return to the palace. Ruan Yingying propped her chin on one hand, and asked me lazily once more, "Which of those 7 young lords has truly caught your fancy, Xianxian?" She leaned close to my ear, her breath soft as orchid petals, her tone laced with temptation. "If you can't choose, why not take them all? Then you can let the one who pleases you most attend to your bedchamber each night." The memory of the uproar at the proposal a few days prior sent a shiver down my spine. Ruan Yingying only laughed all the more at that. Just then, Mother strode in with a letter in her hand, her face flushed with anger. "Word from the hidden guards, Peiji has a taste for men." She stumbled over her words in her haste to comfort me. "Xianxian, Don't lose heart. If there's any man you set your sights on, mother will seize him and bring him home for you." Father burst into a violent cough at her words, shot her a look, and muttered awkwardly, "The children are here, don't talk nonsense." "Oh, I forgot to mention, father was the one mother seized and brought home by force all those years ago." Wan Yingying cut them off. "Stop playing matchmaker at random. Our Xianxian has already made up her mind, haven't you?" I nodded almost imperceptibly. Wan Yingying clapped her hands. "Perfect. The gambling den I opened in the north of the city has been taking bets on who you'll choose these days. I'll order someone to wager all my fortune at once." Coincidentally, the fewest people bet on Yi Huayan. "I'm sure to make a killing." I froze, and retorted loudly, "When did I say it was him?" Wan Yingying leaned in, her words loaded with meaning. "Xianxian, you truly underestimate the basic skills of a green tea like me." She smiled like a cat that had stolen the cream. "You're such a straightforward person, Xianxian. It's only natural that you'd be drawn to a resilient, stubborn little flower like Yi Huayan, isn't it?" My heart, which had been pounding so hard it felt ready to leap out of my chest, gradually calmed down. Phew, that scared me. I thought she'd seen right through my little secret crush in the back garden that day. Yi Huayan listened to my scolding, his face as pale as paper. His expression was filled with sorrow, and he struggled to speak after a long while. "I suppose in the second young lady's heart, Huayan is truly beyond redemption. But in Huayan's heart, to be graced with even one more glance from you would make my life complete. What are fame and fortune to me?" "Perfect." I nodded in satisfaction. That was exactly the vibe I was after, the pure, unadulterated green tea energy. Identical to Wan Yingying's. That was the first reason I chose Yi Huayan. Truth be told, I love Wan Yingying very much, but I'll never tell her that. If she knew, she'd probably stop fussing over me altogether. I always wear a cold face in front of her. Every time I do, Wan Yingying loves to poke my cheek and say, "Xianxian, smile more." We haven't spent much time together, only exchanging occasional letters. Shortly after we were born, I left for Jiangju with mother to guard the northern border, while Wan Yingying stayed in the capital with father to ease the emperor's worries. Last year, civil strife broke out in the northern borderlands, leaving them no time to harass the Great Huai. Fretting over my marriage, mother brought me back to the capital for a short stay. I knew nothing of the 5 rituals or 6 arts, drawing endless laughter from others. I heard them whisper behind my back, calling me uncouth. But Wan Yingying was different. She would read the obscure and difficult military books, then come to me with the parts she didn't understand. Every morning when I rose early to practice spear fighting, Wan Yingying would stand by and prepare tea for me. When the mood struck her, she'd pester me to teach her a few moves. Like most noble ladies in Xingjing, she had no interest in these matters of fighting and killing. She did it all just to grow closer to me. So really, what's so bad about a green tea? Thoughtful, sweet-tongued, and surprisingly considerate. As long as I'm not the one she's scheming against, isn't she just my little treasure? On the day Yi Huayan and I exchanged the betrothal letters, I received a letter from Wan Yingying, sent from the palace. The first line read, "I object to this marriage." I shot Yi Huayan a subconscious glance, and forced myself to read on. It turned out that at the gambling den Wan Yingying owned, she'd been the only one betting on Yi Huayan. She'd been all ready to make a huge fortune. But for some reason, Yi Huayan had also gone to the gambling den the day before, and he'd bet frantically on himself. The huge winnings that should have been hers alone were now split with Yi Huayan, who'd taken the larger half. She was seething with resentment, and had specially sent the letter just to annoy Yi Huayan. I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. Few people could make Wan Yingying this angry. Yi Huayan had already guessed what the letter said. He tugged at the sleeve of my robe and explained, "Xianxian, they bet the most on someone else. I had to step in and set things right. If eldest sister is angry, I'll take no share of the winnings, they'll all be hers." Curiosity got the better of me, and I rested my chin in my hand and asked, who was the one everyone bet the most on? Someone worth Yi Huayan making such a fuss over. At the mention of this, Yi Huayan clenched his fists, his face filled with indignation. "Jiyu Zhao, they even said you two are childhood sweethearts, bound by affection." Yi Huayan let out a cold snort. If I'd known you since we were children, I would have doted on you, protected you, cherished you with all my heart, and loved only you. I'd never bear to waver between two people and hurt you like that." I let out a soft laugh. I thought to myself, Yi Huayan's jealousy is truly for nothing. The one he should be jealous of is the man sitting on the golden dragon throne in the palace. To be honest, Yi Huayan is an extremely thoughtful fiancé. Every time he invites me out, he always carries a warm salt bag with him. At first, I had no idea why until one day, when it rained. Yi Huayan carefully pressed the salt bag to my knee and asked, "Is that any better?" My eyes widened in surprise. Not even mother knew I had a wound there. It was a scar I'd gotten saving someone on the battlefield. Nothing serious. The battlefield is a brutal place. Bumps and bruises are commonplace. Compared to those who lost their lives, what was my little injury? Just a minor ache, flaring up every now and then. But when Yi Huayan lowered his eyes and massaged my knee gently, I couldn't bear to pull my leg away. My reputation in Shengjing has never been good, but Yi Huayan is different. He is a role model for all scholars who come to Shengjing to study, held in the highest esteem. Occasionally, sitting in the carriage, I'd hear acquaintances stop Yi Huayan and ask, "Young Master Yi, are you really going to marry the second Miss Ruan? I've heard she grew up in a military camp, rough and unrefined like a man. How can she be worthy of a man as noble and pure as you?" The scholars of Shengjing all value etiquette and cultivation above all else. Ashamed to be ignorant of the 5 classics, would Yi Huayan think the same way? Would he also find me rude and unsightly? I clenched my fists tightly, listening to the commotion outside the carriage. Yi Huayan's voice was cold, as if frozen in ice shards, each word a sharp rebuke. "I remember Brother Meng's family is wealthy. You've studied since childhood, even apprenticed under several famous masters, living a life of ease and comfort. But have you ever wondered what your ease is built on? It's built on the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers guarding the border. They fight bloody battles on the front lines, hungry and cold, fearing an attack from the northern border every moment, their lives hanging by a thread. It is they who shield you from harm." Yi Huayan spoke each word slowly, like a blade striking steel. "You, who have received their kindness, dare to turn around and mock her for being rough. How pitiful." Tears pricked at my eyes, and I closed them for a moment. When I opened them again, Yi Huayan had climbed into the carriage without my noticing, staring at me cautiously. "Xianxian, don't overthink it. I chased that man away." He let out a cold snort. "I'm not like those fools. To be able to marry you is the greatest blessing of my life." The air between us turned tender and ambiguous. After a long while, I turned my face away and reminded him softly, "Yi Huayan, don't forget our agreement." Yi Huayan's eyes drooped instantly, like a large dog with its tail between its legs. "I remember, on the night of my wedding to Yi Huayan, mother set off back for the northern border. She had only come back for my marriage. Now that everything was settled, she had to return to guard the border. The emperor and Ruan Yingying also came to the wedding in plain clothes, and Yi Huayan was entertaining them in the front hall. I waited for a while, intending to bid Yi Huayan farewell in person, but the emperor showed no sign of leaving. If I stayed any longer, I'd never catch up to mother, so I left Yi Huayan a letter. In it, I told him the truth. The woman he'd fallen in love with at first sight was not me, but my elder sister. The battlefield ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, so I left him a signed divorce letter if he wished to end the marriage. He need only sign it, and it would take effect at once. This was the second reason I chose Yi Huayan. He was the one who told me he knew my heart lay on the border, that I refused to be confined to the walls of a mansion. If I agreed to marry him, it would put mother's heart at ease, and I could still rush back to the northern border to recapture our lost lands and be the general I wanted to be, and he was willing to cover for me. We traveled slowly on the way back to Jiangju. I saw the people of the borderlands plundered by the northern soldiers, 5-year-old children starving with empty bellies, groups of refugees fleeing their homes, swallows building their nests in the woods, and even cannibalism, kin devouring kin. I thought back to the first time I set foot on the battlefield at 13. Mother was terrified I'd get hurt, ordering me to stay by her side at all times, even though I was already one of the greatest warriors in the Great Huai. I had never seen such a tragic scene. Blood dyed most of the desert red, stretching out like a blooming man-eating flower in the distance. Gorgeous, yet utterly cruel. A young soldier who had smiled and talked to me only a moment before fell dead in a pool of blood the next, his eyes still wide open in death. Every soldier had a letter to his family sewn into his pocket, and if he fell, the survivors would send it home for him. I finally understood why, every time we returned from battle. Win or lose, Mother's face was always grave, locking herself in the Buddhist hall and kneeling for an entire day. She was mourning her fallen comrades. I want to be like Mother, to guard Jiangju, a duke protector feared by every soldier in the northern border at the mere mention of my name. But I want to be even better than Mother. I want to ride my horse across the northern border, and make sure no one dares to invade the borders of the Great Hui ever again. Mother forbade me from going to the battlefield, so I disguised myself as a man and snuck into the army as a follower. By chance, the two brats assigned to my tent were Shen Yu and Pang Yuan. They talked a lot, making the journey far from boring, though the two boys pestered me non-stop every night to teach them spear fighting. I heard they'd even begged the emperor in person to accompany Mother to the northern border for training. Shen Yu was a master of sweet talk. Sister Shen, please teach us. One glimpse of you at the drill ground, and I was utterly captivated by your wild goose feather spear technique. He added, General Nai feels the same way. He said you once saved his life. When was that? On the battlefield. So that was it. I'd saved so many people over the years, I'd long since lost count. As soon as I arrived in Jiangju, I received a letter from Yi Huayan. It was short. Only 4 words, await your triumphant return. Easier said than done. Father had waited half his life for Mother in Shengjing, and they still hadn't been reunited. Mother sighed softly when she saw me. Once, she'd feared the monk's prophecy for me and refused to let me risk my life. Now it seemed she'd come to her senses. She couldn't stop me. I was sent to the military camp, starting as the lowliest foot soldier, then a squad leader, a platoon leader, until I became Mother's adjutant. Most generals guarding the Great Hui's borders rarely took the initiative to attack, for the northern border was nothing but a vast desert. Get lost there, and you'd never find your way out. I got lost on my 5th campaign against the northern border, wandering deep in the desert. My troops charged straight into the northern Khan's royal court by accident. For years, they'd hidden behind the desert's natural barriers, living in seclusion, when my 3,000 cavalry attacked. The northern Khan was indulging in pleasure. His garrison generals were either asleep or drunk. The northern border, which had plagued the Great Hui for nearly a century, fell to me without a fight. It only took a little effort. By the time I returned to Jiangju, 3 full months had passed. Mother had grown thin, and even my great victory couldn't bring much joy to her face. She looked troubled as she told me, the first month you went missing. Word reached Shengjing. Yi Huayan resigned from his post at the Hanlin Academy and came to Jiangju to find you. He's been wandering the desert alone for 35 days now. I collapsed to the ground in shock. No one knew the dangers of the desert better than I, with my fine steed, my men, and my desert survival experience. I'd nearly lost my life several times. How much more a scholar like Yi Huayan? I suddenly remembered the monk's prophecy, shall not gain the one loved, shall not see completeness. Once, I'd thought it referred to Jiyu Zhao, but I hadn't thought of him in years. Instead, my thoughts were always with Yi Huayan. He sent me a letter every month, always the same 4 words, await your triumphant return. I'd write back with just as few, safe and sound, no need to worry. There were times during the campaigns, when I had a moment of peace, I'd lean outside my tent and stare at the starry sky, and my thoughts would drift to him unconsciously. Where was he now? What was he doing? Was he looking at the same starry sky, thinking of me too? A bonfire party was being held in the camp. My capture of the northern Khan's court meant the war was over, and they could all go home. Joy lit up every face, all except Yi Huayan's. Could I really leave him all alone out there? At the thought, I leaped onto my horse. Mother chased after me. Xianxian, where are you going? It's been so long. Huayan is probably already. I slapped the horse's rump and didn't look back. I'm bringing him home. Alive or dead, I would bring Yi Huayan back to his homeland. Behind me, Mother stared at my retreating figure for a long time, murmuring to herself, "That boy, he said the same thing when he left." I wandered aimlessly for what felt like an eternity. I lost count of the sunrises and sunsets. The vast desert scorched my skin and tortured my anxious heart. Time and again, I'd spot a dark figure and rush over eagerly, only to find a stranger, a tree, a camel, never Yi Huayan, until one day. As the sun rose in the east, painting the sky with brilliant rays of light, I found a temple in an oasis. The abbot saw me and was not the least surprised. He folded his hands together and said, "Amitabha, benefactor, follow me." Yi Huayan was packing his bags. He wore coarse linen clothes. Not a trace left of the refined young master from Shengjing. His bags were stuffed full, and he was about to bid the abbot farewell and continue his journey, but he froze the moment he saw me. Yi Huayan ran to me in a frenzy, wrapping his arms around me as if he'd found a lost treasure. His embrace was so tight, so desperate, afraid I'd disappear again in the next second. "Xianxia, do you know how worried I was? 100 days. I haven't heard a word from you in 100 days. The young man I'd known had grown into a man. His back was broad and strong. I closed my eyes and soothed him. "I'm perfectly fine. It's you I'm worried about, venturing into this desert alone. Do you know how scared I was?" Yi Huayan sounded a little wronged as he angrily unslung his bag. That's when I saw it. Inside were only a few rations, and the rest were bulging with letters. All the letters I'd written to him over the years. Yi Huayan turned his face away, tears streaming down his cheeks, his long, bony fingers curled into fists, as if he was struggling to hold back his emotions. "Whenever I thought I couldn't go on, I'd take out one of your letters and read it. The thought that you might be waiting for me gave me strength. I had to keep going. I had to find you." I sniffled and asked, "What if you never found me?" Yi Huayan was slowly gathering the scattered letters. He paused at my words, then said calmly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, "I'd keep looking. Until the day I die." I didn't notice when the people in the temple had left. By the time I came to my senses, the windows of the guest room were closed tight. Yi Huayan held me in his left arm, and as he laid me on the bed, he carefully supported the back of my head with his hand. His fair skin was flushed pink. He propped himself up over me with one hand, his posture seemingly dominant, yet he didn't dare meet my eyes. His voice was still as clear and soft as ever, stammering as he asked, "Xianxia, can we make up for our wedding night, please?" I let out a soft laugh. If I hadn't allowed it, he never would have dared to act so boldly. With his little bit of skill, I didn't say yes or no. Instead, I raised my hand to cover his eyes, and leaned up to kiss his lips. As we bid the abbot farewell, he suddenly spoke, "Second Miss Yuan, I read your fortune when you were born." I stared at him in confusion. The world had long since said that Master Yuan Qing had vanished without a trace. Turns out he'd been living in seclusion in this desert. I said blankly, "I know." The 2 lines were, "Your fate had 2 more lines." Back then, the Duke Protector was overcome with grief and forbade me from speaking further. In the faint morning light, the abbot folded his hands together, his eyes filled with compassion, and slowly spoke 8 words, "Flourishing branches in spring full. Moon in heaven's heart round."